Hey friend, Chris Vandeviver here from WhyLogicProRules.com, the website that helps you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Today I want to share with you my top 5 mixing tips that I use every time I sit down to mix a song. And, as techniques come and go, as you try new things out and decide they don't work as well and you move on to other things, as plugins come and go, that third-party plugin that's on sale that you are just so sure that you need it at the time and now it's just collecting dust in the plugin folder. These tips I rely on every time I mix, and they just don't change. They're fundamental tips that just steer me in the right direction each and every time, regardless of what comes and goes. I always can rely on these particular strategies. So I want to share those with you today. Now, number 1 in my list, I rely on every single time. It's a classic. I'm sure you've read about it or heard about it, but mixing in mono. In my opinion, mixing in mono is crucial, and I will spend 80% of my mix time. 80%. So if I spend a day on a track, I'm spending, 6 of those 8 hours just in mono. And then I'll spend the last 20% when I feel like everything is really well balanced within mono. Then I'll expand to stereo and then double check my panning decisions, double check that I'm making the best use of the stereo spectrum. Mono forces all of your tracks to sit on top of one another. They can't hide anywhere between the left and the right. You can't place it somewhere on the right-hand side and say, sounds pretty good. It's out of the way. Everything's on top of one another. They're collapsed. And so if there's a misbalance in terms of levels, if there's a misbalance in terms of tonality, it's got nowhere to hide. You have to reckon with that. And the setup for mono mixing is so simple. You don't need a special speaker for it. I know a lot of folks ask that question, Chris, should I have just a single speaker for mixing in mono? And, technically that's probably the best option. But in my opinion, all you got to do is just go down to your stereo output or your master output and just throw a gain plugin. And you just click on the mono button. And from here, you're ready to start mixing in mono. It will sound like it comes from a single source. Let's hear it.
I do what I want. Ain't no one can stop me. Oh, don't you mind me?
And we hear everything from a single source. And so we have to reckon with everything as is. It really is such a huge help. And then once you feel pretty good about the balance in this sort of setup, we can turn off mono. And you definitely want to turn off the mono button if you're bouncing out your track to listen anywhere else or send to a client or to a friend. But then we can take a listen in stereo once we feel comfortable and good about the mono mix.
I do what I want. Ain't no one can stop me. Oh, don't you mind me?
And in fact, I have a whole video dedicated to mono mixing, so I'll include a link within this video so you can check out a deeper dive into that. But mono mixing to me is just absolutely crucial. I've been doing it for many years. Number 2 on our list is focus on faders first. The fader doesn't get the respect that it deserves. And in fact, I have a whole video dedicated to the lowly fader and how important it is. And it can solve a lot of problems for you if you focus on that before EQ or compression or anything else. So once you have your mix in mono, you've placed a gain plugin on the stereo output, you have a single speaker, you have a mono sum button on your audio interface, start just playing with the faders. Don't touch any plugins, just try to get levels going and see how much of a balance you can get just with faders. Because I think you'll find that really, if you just spend like 15 minutes to even up to an hour just on faders, you can get a lot accomplished and you'll need less EQ as a result, less compression, less of a lot of things. If a track is too loud in the mix, we often consider it to be a little too boomy or too bright or too this or too that. While if a track is too quiet in the mix, we perceive it as too muddy, not bright enough, not boomy enough. Whatever adjective you want to use, we perceive too quiet as, not enough and too loud as too much. And it kind of makes sense, right? It's too loud or it's too quiet. But instead of reaching for the fader first, we reach for plugins to try to reduce that brightness or that boominess or boost the brightness. And in fact, if we just take a listen to this mix, as you heard, and I'm just going to boost the vocals, got to find the vocals here. I'm going to boost them by 3 dB and let's see how we perceive them in the mix.
I do what I want. Ain't no one can stop me. Oh, don't you mind me? Can't you see I'm carefree?
Right? And then let's compare it against too quiet.
I do what I want. Ain't no one can stop me. Oh, don't don't you mind me? Can't you see I'm carefree?
Whereas if I leave it at the fader level that I had it set at,
I do what I want. Ain't no one can stop me. Oh, don't you mind me?
so I'll let you decide what you think is too loud, too quiet, but I believe that you can hear that when it's too loud, it feels like too much and things need to be reined in with EQ or compression. Whereas if it's too quiet, then we need to bring stuff out of this particular vocal track. So by focusing on faders first, I think you can solve a lot of problems very easily without needing tons and tons of processors. If you take a look, my mix, I pile on the processors on the vocals, but just about anything else in the mix is pretty low key. I don't need much besides EQ, compression, and a little saturation. Number 3 on our list is to fix it at the source. Now, this is an easy one. A lot of people throw this around, get it right at the recording stage. Don't try to fix it in the mix, right? And what's really cool these days is that I know for a fact, because I've heard hundreds of mixes from various Logic users and projects, and that is that most of us are composing, recording, and writing our music within Logic, and most of us are using the built-in included software instruments or third-party software instruments. So that means drums, that means guitar amps, synths. Probably the only thing most of us are actually recording with a microphone are vocals and acoustic guitars. So many of us can actually improve the tone of an instrument after we've recorded it. For example, how many of us have tried to brighten up a kick drum or a bass guitar where it's just all sub low end and we need to get more articulation out of it? I have a video dedicated to that. And we're trying to bring out some, mid-range or brightness or something so you can hear that bass or that kick on a cell phone speaker, in a dense mix. But if your track is all low end and it has no upper end, no matter how much you boost with EQ, you're just not going to add any more top end to that bass, to that kick, to that synth, because it doesn't exist. So by going into that synth parameter and just lifting up that low pass filter, you're suddenly going to introduce all sorts of top end. Or if you have a kick drum that just does not sound good no matter what, pick a different kick drum sound. If we take a look at these synths, let's just solo them. Let's take a listen, and I'm going to just toss an EQ right on top of it, and I'm just going to bring that all the way down, right? Take a listen. Right? So let's now try to introduce some top end right in that section. So if we remove the EQ that's reducing all that top end, your life will be so much easier just by digging into the instrument, swapping the sound, adjusting the tonality. But if you find yourself in a situation where you can't change the tonality of the instrument at the source because you put a microphone in front of that instrument and that's the way it came, you can't go back to the software instrument and, twiddle the knobs, that's fine. There are ways to work around that. Logic has a drum replacement and doubling feature. I've used that even for software-based drum tracks. I've added or doubled up or replaced using that feature. Also, things like Space Designer can be a huge help with its warped IRs or impulse responses. In fact, if we take a look at this tom fill that's right before the chorus here, and it's right here, the big fill.
And then make a baby.
Right? So originally, this was a pretty bright track.
And then make a baby.
And to me, it didn't seem like it held down the low end as it should. So I used the channel EQ and I reduced some, mids and some upper mids. And then I used the overdrive plugin to just add some saturation, just to give it a little crunchier feeling. But I used Space Designer. And if we dig in, we have the clean console warped effect here, which is under the analog circuits, which gives the sound of a console. So I used it really to darken up this signal. So before and after with Space Designer.
And then make a baby.
And before.
And then make a baby.
And there we go. So it has that power, it has that low end sort of thing going on for it now, where before I thought it was a bit too bright. Number 4 on our list is to mix in context. Now, the solo button exists for a reason, and I would be absolutely lying to you if I didn't use it. But the solo button can skew our sense of how to mix our tracks, where you don't exactly know how to mix the guitars without the vocals, or the synths without the vocals, or the kick drum without the bass. And if we are only focusing on just the vocal track and nothing else is playing around the vocal track, we can make some pretty weird decisions. So I always make sure to have another instrument soloed so I have some context for how to approach the instrument I'm working on. For example, when it comes to drums, I always like to add the bass track. So when I'm mixing drums, which is what I usually start with, I'll have the bass track at the very least or something else just to give me some context so I know what's going on. And once I'm feeling comfortable with the drums, any other instrument I want to solo and work on, I will mix alongside the drums. So in this case, I usually work drums, bass, vocals, and then everything else. So we can bring in maybe the rap vocals here. Take a listen.
Baby girl looking reckless and Jesus is on my necklace. Today I ain't grinding and he ain't worried about pinching pennies. I'm pulling out making moves where it's late at the cemetery. I've been going non-stop, so it's time that
So I'm not going to dig too deep into it, but I always am working alongside another track. I'm always in context. I'm never just listening to the vocals, because if we just listen to the vocals,
Baby girl looking reckless and Jesus is on my necklace. Today I ain't grinding and he ain't worried about pinching pennies. I'm pulling out
and by listening in solo, you might have some opinions about that vocal tone. I mean, right now I'm having some opinions about it, but in the mix, it works. And that's the only thing that matters, in the sauce, not by itself. And number 5 in our list, the last one, and one I've harped on again and again, but I truly believe in it and I use it, every single day. And that is to mix with reference tracks while you mix. Reference tracks make a lot of folks feel uncomfortable, and I totally understand because you're comparing your mix efforts against folks who do this day in and day out. This is their day job, they're professionals, and, it can be hard to compare. Comparison is always, the thief of happiness, but in this case, comparison is absolutely key. And reference tracks are absolutely crucial because it's like picking a map up and pointing somewhere on the map and saying, this is where we're trying to get to. And that is so helpful. Where a lot of people tend to, I think, misuse references is that they wait until they're done with the mix to start comparing. Where I am comparing right from the moment I load the tracks into a Logic Project, before I've done much more besides adjust faders and panning. I will compare so I can start to tune my ears to where I need to go in terms of tone, in terms of balance, etc. So in my case, I just load the Mastering the Mix plugin called Reference 2. I'm not trying to sell you on any plugins. You could just load your reference tracks right into Logic. But in this case, I just load the reference tracks into this plugin, and then I can just flip between my mix, the original, and the reference with a single click. And I even have the original mix from that reader so I can compare my mix efforts to make sure I'm enhancing their track and not totally changing it and making it, worse in their eyes. Even if it might be better, it might be so far removed from the demo that it doesn't sound good to them, And in fact, if we just compare right now, I'll show you how easy it is.
I do what I want. Ain't no one can stop me. Oh, don't you mind me? Can't you see I'm carefree on the beach in my zone with my flippin' floppies? Oh, don't you mind me?
But I start the comparing right from the beginning of the session, and I will periodically compare against my references because it helps keep my ears tuned and keep me on track. Otherwise, just kind of roaming the earth without a map, without being able to read the stars. I don't know where I'm going. I don't have a compass. You really are just destined for a lot of heartache without referencing. And a lot of folks will ask me, hey, Chris, where should I get reference tracks from? And I just go on iTunes. I know that the iTunes tracks are lossy. They're not high-res waves. But honestly, it's good enough for me. I just go into Apple Music now. I go to the browse function and we'll search for a band that I love. And let's take a look for where it is. And then I'll go to the song that I want to download, click on the 3 little dots and go to Show in iTunes Store. And from there, you'll be able to purchase the track right from iTunes. So I hope this was helpful for you. If it was, as always, I highly recommend subscribing to the YouTube channel, Why Logic Pro Rules, or subscribing on the website itself, whylogicprorules.com. Every week I'm posting new videos, new emails, and posts, to help you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Thanks so much.